The siege of Tyre in 332 BC represents one of the most extraordinary military, engineering, and psychological achievements of Alexander the Great, and stands as a defining episode in his campaign against the Persian Empire. After his decisive victory over Darius III at the Battle of Issus in 333 BC, Alexander deliberately moved south along the eastern Mediterranean coast with a clear and calculated strategic objective to deprive the Persian Empire of its naval power by capturing the Phoenician ports on which the Persian fleet depended. Control of the sea was essential because as long as Persian ships could operate freely, Alexander's lines of communication remained vulnerable and Greek cities could be threatened or encouraged to revolt. Many Phoenician cities, including Byblos and Sidon, quickly recognized the shifting balance of power and surrendered peacefully, providing Alexander with supplies, ships, and political legitimacy. Tyre, however, chose resistance. This decision was rooted in Tyre's unique position and identity. It was the wealthiest and most powerful Phoenician city, famous for its maritime skill, its ancient prestige, and its immense prosperity derived from trade networks that extended across the Mediterranean and from the production of the highly prized Tyrian purple dye, a symbol of royalty throughout the ancient world. The Tyrians believed their city to be virtually invulnerable due to its geography. The main urban center of Tyre was located on an island approximately 800 meters off the coast, protected by massive stone walls that rose directly from the sea to heights of up to 45 meters on the side facing the mainland, while the seaward walls, though slightly lower, were still formidable. These defenses, combined with a strong fleet and experienced sailors, gave the Tyrians great confidence that Alexander, who initially lacked significant naval strength, could not capture the city. When Alexander demanded entry into Tyre to perform a ritual sacrifice to Melkart, the city's chief god whom he identified with Heracles, the Tyrians refused him access, offering instead that he sacrifice at a mainland sanctuary. Although framed as a diplomatic compromise, this refusal was interpreted by Alexander as a direct denial of his authority and a symbolic challenge to his claim of universal rule. Determined to assert his dominance and aware of the strategic necessity of Tyre's fall, Alexander resolved to take the city by force, despite the unprecedented difficulties involved. At the outset of the siege, a direct naval assault was impossible, and it was in this context that Alexander conceived one of the boldest and most innovative solutions in ancient warfare, the construction of a massive causeway or mole connecting the mainland to the island, effectively transforming a naval siege into a land-based operation. Macedonian soldiers dismantled the ruins of the abandoned mainland city of Tyre, using its stones, rubble, and timber to build the causeway. Progress was initially rapid in the shallow coastal waters, but as the structure extended farther into deeper water, construction became increasingly slow, dangerous, and exposed. Tyrian resistance intensified as the mole advanced. Using their naval superiority, the defenders harassed the workers relentlessly, attacking from ships and walls with arrows, stones, and javelins, while also employing more sophisticated tactics such as fire ships loaded with combustible materials that were set ablaze and sent drifting toward the Macedonian siege works. These attacks successfully destroyed siege towers and equipment on several occasions, caused heavy casualties, and at one point burned much of the causeway itself, creating a serious crisis for Alexander's army and demonstrating the ingenuity and determination of the Tyrian defenders. Rather than abandoning the project, Alexander responded with characteristic resolve. He ordered the causeway to be widened and reinforced, making it more stable and less vulnerable to attack, and he intensified efforts to neutralize Tyre's naval advantage. Through a combination of diplomacy, intimidation, and shifting political loyalties, Alexander gradually secured naval support from Cyprus, Greek allies, and Phoenician cities that had already surrendered. This influx of ships transformed the balance of power at sea, allowing Alexander to impose a complete blockade around Tyre and prevent the city from receiving supplies or reinforcements. With naval superiority achieved, the siege entered a new and more aggressive phase. Macedonian forces attacked the city simultaneously from land and sea, deploying heavy siege engines such as catapults, ballistae, and battering rams mounted on ships and towers positioned along the causeway. Divers were sent underwater to remove obstacles and sabotage defensive structures, while continuous bombardment sought to weaken the walls and exhaust the defenders. Despite mounting pressure, dwindling resources, and growing fatigue, the Tyrians resisted with extraordinary tenacity, repairing breaches during the night, launching surprise counterattacks, and fighting with the awareness that their city represented not only their homes, but also the last great symbol of Phoenician independence. The siege dragged on for approximately 7 months, an unusually long duration for Alexander, who was accustomed to swift and decisive victories. This prolonged resistance further hardened his determination and transformed the struggle into a test of will as much as of military strength. Eventually, sustained bombardment succeeded in opening a significant breach in the southern wall near the causeway. Seizing this opportunity, Alexander launched a carefully coordinated final assault, combining a frontal attack through the breach with simultaneous naval landings along other weakened sections of the walls. Macedonian troops poured into the city, scaling defenses and overwhelming exhausted defenders, leading to brutal and chaotic street fighting as the Tyrians made a desperate last stand. Once the city fell, Alexander imposed severe punishment, driven by anger at the prolonged resistance and the heavy losses his army had suffered. Thousands of Tyrian men were killed during the sack, and an estimated 30,000 inhabitants were sold into slavery, while only a limited number of people, including certain religious officials and those who had taken refuge in temples, were spared. The destruction of Tyre sent a powerful and unmistakable message throughout the eastern Mediterranean that resistance to Alexander would be met with relentless and uncompromising force, while submission would bring security and favor. Strategically, the victory was decisive, as it eliminated the last major Persian naval base in the region, secured Alexander's control of the coastline, and allowed him to advance toward Egypt without fear of attack from the sea. Beyond its immediate military consequences, the siege of Tyre had profound psychological and symbolic significance. It reinforced Alexander's growing image as a conqueror capable of overcoming natural barriers, technological challenges, and human resistance through persistence, innovation, and sheer willpower. The causeway he built permanently altered the geography of the region, transforming Tyre from an island into a peninsula, and stands as a lasting physical reminder of one of the greatest and most dramatic sieges of the ancient world, marking a moment when Alexander's ambition reshaped history and landscape alike.